What's going on, guys? I'm Tim Kelly. He's Anthony SanFilippo. This is Phillies Stoplight.
And this edition of Phillies Stoplight is brought to you by Wapner Newman, Philadelphia's personal injury attorneys.
So, Anthony, the dust is beginning to settle. I shouldn't say settled, but it's beginning to settle. Rob Thompson, according to John Heyman and Joel Sherman of the New York Post, and then I've seen multiple other people, Matt Gelb, Scott Lauber, confirm it. Rob Thompson will be returning as Phillies manager in 2026. What's kind of your instant reaction to that?
So I looked at it one of two ways, Tim. I thought that if you're bringing Rob Thompson back, that meant that you needed to make bigger changes within the roster. And if you were going to keep the roster pretty much the same, then maybe the thing that needed to change was the voice, which would be the manager. So this is obviously this is just the first step in it. So if the Phillies are going to make significant roster changes, then I think that this is a really good move to keep Rob, because I think Rob is a good manager. However, we're going to hold judgment here just yet, because if in fact this team is primarily the same next season, then you have to wonder a little bit if they are going back to the well one too many times.
Yeah.
Now, the one thing I can kind of think of is when the last time that they had a lame duck manager was Joe Girardi, and they fired him in season. So maybe if they don't feel like things are where they need to be at some point during the year, they would make a change in season, because Rob's going to go into a lame duck season here. Unless we get an announcement at some point in the next day or so that he got an extension, which I don't think that is going to be the case, especially with 27 so up in the air. Then okay, fine. Maybe you go at it from that perspective, and if it, hey, if things are going great, fine. If not, then you can make a change. But I really think this ties down to what the roster is going to look like, and I think that the Phillies are smart enough to sit there and say, okay, we're bringing this guy back, but we're going to put more of the blame here on the players. As such, we need to make changes in that lineup and in that roster. And if they don't, well, then the blame goes above the players, above the manager, and it goes to the executives of the team, and to say, why are you trotting the same thing back out again for a fifth straight year?
Yeah, and I mean, to a degree, I think, does the element of, well, it wouldn't be fair to fire Rob Thompson, does that come into play here? He's got a .580 winning percentage. He has been as good as any Phillies manager in the regular season in history of the team. He did win a pennant, but obviously 2023, they kind of collapsed. They did collapse. And then the last 2 years, specifically this year, because last year I just don't think they were very good heading into the playoffs. This year they got a bad draw, but they end up coming up short for the second year in a row. And ultimately, even if you got a bad draw, you were going to have to face the Dodgers at some point in the postseason, most likely to get to where you wanted to go. You got that chance and you didn't come through. I do think if the Phillies had gotten swept, if the plan for Aaron Nola starting as the opener in Game 3 had blown up in their faces, even if it wasn't necessarily just Rob Thompson's plan, if that had blown up in their faces, I think we're talking about a managerial change being made right now. That didn't happen. And if anything, it worked to a T in that game. I know you can debate, well, should he have walked Ohtani? I think he should have. Should he have left Luzardo in another batter? You can debate these little things. The bottom line is the Phillies gave up 2 runs in 11 innings in the final game of the season. They did not lose that game because of Rob Thompson. So there is that angle of it. The flip side that I keep coming to in my head is that after the Sixers lost Game 7 to the Raptors, I remember thinking, well, it's not fair to fire Brett Brown after that, because if the ball bounces a different way, the Sixers might move on to the Eastern Conference Finals. So they keep Brett Brown for another year, and then they come back and they have an even more disappointing season, and it turns out that you kept him a year too long. Are we going to be in this position next year saying the Phillies kept him a year too long? I think that's a real question. What I would say in terms of the contract is that I don't think they should, if they're bringing him back, which by all accounts they're doing, they haven't made an announcement, but honestly, there's nothing to announce. He's under contract, so you don't announce that someone is continuing to honor their contract.
Right.
But if he is back, I think you do have to put an extra year on, because if you start slowly or anything, or even if you're playing well in June, then the conversation becomes, oh, are you going to extend Rob Thompson? Like, it's too much of a distraction. I think even if you, it doesn't actually preclude you from getting rid of him after next season. If things don't go the way you want, you would just have to pay to get rid of him, which is a write-off in many senses. I do think they should just give a 1-year extension as they did last year and not have that hang over not only Rob Thompson's head, but more importantly, the team's head the whole year.
Well, and keep in mind, Tim, that the reason that those things, quote unquote, hang over the head of the team is because people like you and me continually ask questions about it, right? So it becomes the fact is, does John Middleton want to spend whatever X amount of dollars on an extension for Rob Thompson just to avoid us asking questions about Rob Thompson's contract situation? And the answer sometimes to that is going to be yes. And sometimes they're like, you know what, screw it. We'll deal with the question. We'll just, deflect until we actually have to answer it. I don't know. I think that we're going into a unique time with the pending labor war in 27, where who knows what the hell that season's going to look like, if there's going to be a season at all. And so maybe Rob Thompson looks at it and says, maybe he's told the team, I only want one more shot at it. And then I'm going to walk away at the end of that. Like we heard another announcement today. Mike Schilt retired as manager of the San Diego Padres. A little bit of a surprise for a lot of people, but he's walking away from the game. And, and I just wonder if maybe Rob's kind of dictated that a little bit and say, you know what, I don't necessarily need another year on this deal. Let's let the year play out, see where we're at. I might walk away no matter what. In which case, then you kind of leave it as is. Should the Phillies tell us that? It would behoove them to say it so they avoid the line of questions. But it's very real possibility there that's the situation with Rob. So the change is not going to come there. I also wonder, though, Tim, when we're looking at this holistically here, are there other changes to the coaching staff going to come out now? Because you're keeping the manager, and that's fine. But you look at, obviously Caleb Cotham's not going anywhere unless somebody hires him as a manager, but I don't think that's going to happen. You just pay him whatever he wants to be paid. He's one of the best pitching coaches in baseball.
He's great.
Keep him, right? I wonder, though, about Kevin Long, and I wonder, though, about other coaching people on the coaching staff. Do you try and change some of those voices to kind of shake things up a little bit? I don't know if that's on the agenda or not.
Yeah, Rob's a very loyal guy, though. So I like, if the Phillies came to him and said, you need to make a change at bench coach or whatever, like, would he do that? I don't know. And honestly, if you make a change at bench coach, at third base coach, first base coach, like, doesn't that just come off as a scapegoat that you're not really changing anything? You're getting rid of somebody to get rid of somebody. But the two people on his staff with the most power would be Caleb Cotham, who I wouldn't get rid of under any scenario. Even if they had changed managers, I would have forced him on the new manager. That's how good I think he is at his job. And Zach Wheeler is the biggest testament to that. He speaks incredibly highly of him all the time. So I wouldn't make a change there. And I'm torn on Kevin Long because I understand that the Phillies have come up small in some of these postseasons, including this year offensively. But is it Kevin Long's fault that Bryce Harper and Trey Turner didn't hit in the playoffs? Is it Kevin Long's fault that, like, as much as Marsh, Stott, Bohm, they have been contributors, did you maybe over-evaluate what you had with some of those guys, thinking that they were going to become core pieces and they're good players? Because Stott in the second half, under Kevin Long's tutelage, he made a change to his batting stance, his load, and he hit 294 in the second half of the season. Brandon Marsh had a nightmarish start to the season, and I get the playoffs were ugly, but he was really good from like May on. Alec Boehm has had nice moments. I just think he kind of is what he is as a player. I feel like there was more of an argument with Kevin Long of making a change last year than there is right now.
So here's the thing with this, right? And I agree with everything you just said. I think what you just said was spot on. So really, when it comes down to is that when a team fails, 95% of the time, it's about players. That the reason that the team failed. But you can't get rid of all your players. So what do? You make changes to coaches, managers, whatever the case might be. Well, they've decided to keep Rob because I think that they value what Rob does as a manager and how he manages people, how he manage. I think for all the criticism he gets for managing pitching, I think that the way he handles pitching throughout the 162 is really, really good because they're mostly healthy. I mean, look around baseball and then look at the Phillies and take a notice of how healthy their pitchers are, right? So I think that they look at Rob and they see some great value there, right? And I agree with you that changing the coach is scapegoating in a way. I don't necessarily think when you make a change in those coaches that you're sending a message publicly. The message that you're sending is internal. You're telling these guys, these 2-3 people lost their job because you didn't perform. You want to make them feel that, right? You want to make them, and so I think that that's why teams do that in general. I don't sit there and think that they go, oh, this hitting coach is terrible, or this guy's message isn't getting across. I don't think that's the case anymore. I think it's more of a way of sending a message to players that you haven't done your job and somebody has to fall on the sword for you. Now figure it out.
Right. And the only problem with that is it would be one thing. Most coaches operate on like a year-to-year contract. Kevin Long, I just looked it up, is signed through so it's through the 2025 season. So forget what I just said. They could just say, well, we didn't fire him. His deal was up and we decided to go in another direction. I lose track of the years a lot. We decided to go in another direction. We didn't fire him. The problem is Kyle Schwarber's a free agent. That to me is the big issue with, if you want to make a change at hitting coach, even if maybe Kevin Long didn't deserve it, if you think that it's just time for a new voice, normally I would say that's fine. The problem is Kyle Schwarber has credited much of his career turnaround after getting non-tendered by the Cubs to Kevin Long's tutelage, first in DC and then since here. And not to mention, like, Bryce Harper and Trey Turner have been with him at multiple stops now. Like, he is really respected. So, but those guys are under contract regardless. And maybe even if Kevin Long isn't here, maybe if you give Kyle Schwarber the right amount of money, it doesn't matter. But if you're trying to re-sign a guy that just hit 56 home runs this season, getting rid of his mentor in many senses, it would seem to complicate that. Yeah,
certainly would. By the way, just before I answer the question, you say you forget the year when we were in Los Angeles. Do you remember this?
Yes.
We were signing for our credentials. Yeah. Tim put the date down as 2024 instead of 2025. So it's easy to see why Tim forgets the years. I can confirm it. You're right. I mean, that does make it difficult for the negotiation with Schwarber, because now here's the other thing, Tim. Do you maybe not make that determination until after you sign him, or is that looked upon as, maybe we misled the player? Like, I don't know. Like, it's such a delicate thing when it comes to these contract negotiations. I mean, we got to remember, we're dealing with people who have certain personality comforts, certain egos, and you want to manage them properly, and you want to make everybody feel good about the decisions that they're making. And yeah, if you're trying, your damnedest to bring Kyle Schwarber back, you obviously want him to be comfortable with his surroundings, to say yes to you and not go off and re-sign with the Cubs or sign with his hometown team in Cincinnati. Like, those things do matter. So it's certainly something to take under consideration.
Well, and beyond Kevin Long not being here, if you let Kevin Long go, does one of those teams hire Kevin Long, even if it's not as a hitting coach? And I don't know even who the hitting coach in Cincinnati or Chicago is right now off the top of my head. The point is, Kevin Long is well thought of enough that certainly the Cubs have shown a willingness to fire coaches when they think there's someone better out there. And they had a disappointing season, even though they made the playoffs. And clearly they know that they messed up on Kyle Schwarber the first time. So it would not shock me in the least if they won a mulligan. And Terry Francona, I don't know if he has any relationship with Kevin Long other than both of them have been in the sport for a long time. But again, if one of these teams wants to make a push for Kevin Long, not only are you helping them by potentially getting rid of him, you're also maybe giving them the strength of having the chance to hire them. So I think that's something to consider. It's not to say you're letting Kyle Schwarber dictate who your coaches are, but when a guy becomes a free agent, they get power that they don't otherwise have, even that Trey Turner and Bryce Harper don't have right now because they're signed. And you want Kyle Schwarber back, presumably in 2026. If not, I don't know how you're not a worse team like we've talked about. So it's definitely something to consider there. But the first thing we know is that Rob Thompson's back. So we'll see what happens on the coaching staff changes. I would imagine whenever Dave Dombrowski speaks, which I would presume will be sometime this week, but it hasn't been announced or revealed or anything to this point, they'll say either the coaching staff is back or part of it's back, whatever the case is. Then the attention, though, does turn to the players. Even if you make a change like moving on a hitting coach or a new bench coach, that's still like you can't just do that and bring back the entirety of the same roster. So then to me, with Rob Thompson back, it shifts to what are the changes you're going to make? If we assume Bryce Harper and Trey Turner are not going anywhere, both have huge contracts, both have full no trade clauses, families, like I think they both wanted to be set at this stage of their career. They're back. And I think Bryson Stott is back, not just because he's boys with Bryce Harper, because he had a really good second half. He's only in his first year of arbitration eligibility. It just makes sense. From there, though, I think you start to get into some of these discussions. And look, Nick Castellanos was one of the best interviews we've ever had after the Phillies got eliminated from the postseason. But I specifically asked him, if you were asked to come back in the same role where you're not an everyday player, where you are platooning, would you want to do that or would you want to change of scenery? And he kind of deflected and talked about his knee and he wanted to get that situation figured out. First things first, go from there. He did not say, I definitely want to be back with the Phillies. And I'm not trying to stir shit or anything like that, but he had the chance to say he 100% wants to be back here, and he did not say that, which leads me, especially now that Rob Thompson is back, and it wasn't a creation that Nick Castellanos was benched for a game after arguing with Rob Thompson. It wasn't a creation that Nick Castellanos said they barely ever speak. I think there's almost no chance Nick Castellanos is back next season.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty certain, regardless of Rob Thompson being back. I think this pretty much locks it up without a shadow of a doubt that Nick won't be back. Whether the Phillies flat out release him and eat that money, or they find somebody willing to take on part of that salary in a trade. I do think that we've seen the last of Nick Castellanos here. You're right. I mean, look, outside of Turner, Harper, Stott, I think that, you're looking at the potential for there being a bunch of new people at those other positions in your lineup next year. There's also a chance that a number of them will be filled by people that are currently here. Like you mentioned, Schwarber. I do think Real Muto probably is re-signed. I think Brandon Marsh probably stays in the organization in some capacity, whether it's as a platoon left fielder or whatever the case might be. So I think that those things are going to happen, but I do also think you're going to have a lot of change. Justin Crawford would probably be part of your lineup next year. You're probably not far away. It's probably a year away, but maybe not. Maybe it's a little less for Aiden Miller. And then you got to wonder about, how they're going to fill center field. How are they going to fill right field? Do they keep Alec Boehm at third base? There's a lot of questions. This is going to be as compelling an offseason, I think, as the Phillies have had in quite some time.
Yeah, and Boehm is the one I really look at. The Phillies clearly listened to trade offers for him last year, and the way that they spun it was, well, you got to listen if they call. Well, no, you don't. If teams had called last offseason asking about Zach Wheeler and Bryce Harper, do you think the Phillies were listening on them? No. It makes sense to listen, and it certainly seemed like there was a point early in the offseason where they very well could have traded him. It didn't end up happening. But now he's in his final year. He's due to make $10.5 million. That's his arbitration projected total. And I get you're going to have to backfill third base if you move him. But Alec Boehm was a 102 OPS plus last year, which is just above the league average of 100. $10.5 million. He's not a non-tender candidate to me. He's too good to be a non-tender candidate. but I kind of feel like he's also not a guy you want to pay $10.5 million to. He's also had some injuries the last couple of years. So to me, he's somebody you probably trade at some point this offseason. Marsh is interesting because I thought that last year, but they didn't trade him. And by all accounts, it was never really a discussion. And he's only due $4.5 million. So he has shortcomings. To me, they need to stop this every spring training. Yeah, this is going to be the year he gets extended. No, he's just going to be a platoon guy, and he's good at that, and that's fine. I think we saw from the postseason, not that we didn't already know it prior to that yeah, he can go in out in center field if you need him, but he does not like command the outfield well. He is much better in left field than in center field. So to some degree, it depends. What do you do around him? Is Harrison Bader back? I would lean definitely going to decline the option, and we'll see what happens in free agency. Do they think Justin Crawford is a center fielder or a left fielder? Because if they think he's a left fielder, then I don't know that there is space for Marsh unless you're playing him in right field for Castellanos, which is entirely possible. So to a degree, some of the stuff around him is going to be what decides this. But those two are two guys that I look at. And I think, is there a discussion of just saying, no, you're not going to be as good a catcher, but you can't re-sign every guy that's in their mid-30s on this team? Like, is there a discussion, even if you want to contend next year, for saying it's been a great run with JT Realmuto, but you can't give a 35-year-old catcher 3 years if that's what it's going to take when you have so many other guys signed? I think there is that discussion of, do you just get worse at that position to not straddle yourself with another bad contract?
Yeah, no. I want to get back to the Alec Bohm thing because really interesting comment from Jason Stark in The Athletic. He said, get ready for another winter of Alec Bohm rumblings. He said, Dombrowski tried harder than he let on to move the third baseman last winter. So I thought that's the most important thing, which makes me believe that, Alec Bohm may not be part of the plan going forward.
I think that's a fair belief. And like, would you have Edmundo Sosa be your starting third baseman for half the season and then evaluate at the trade deadline? I would tend to think you would make an upgrade then, but is that upgrade Aiden Miller's ready? Is that upgrade you need to make an external addition? Do you kind of find a platoon guy to go with him at third base and just get cheaper at that spot? Because the money you could save, that $10.5 million, you will need to reallocate somewhere, whether it's re-signing Schwarber. If you don't bring back Schwarber, maybe it's signing Alex Bregman. I don't know, which would obviously fill the Bohm spot at third base. But like, it's not like you're going to get rid of Alec Bohm, get rid of that $10.5 million and pocket it. You're going to be reallocating it somewhere on the roster. You need probably another high-end reliever. Either that means Jose Alvarado's option gets picked up or you look elsewhere. But no, I mean, there's a ton to get into, and we'll have more time roster-wise. But the biggest thing here is that Rob Thompson is back, and that kind of sets the stage for this offseason, where it does feel like, okay, the manager's back. What are the changes going to be? Because it is a universal sentiment. You cannot run it back for what would basically be a fourth year in a row.
Fifth.
Well, fourth year in a row of running it back. But yes, fifth year in a row of the same roster. I mean, I get they added Trey Turner, so I guess like technically maybe it wasn't running it back the first time, but there need to be changes. I think Nick Castellanos is clearly going to be one of those changes. And then you go from there. But Rob Thompson will be back, and that means changes have to happen elsewhere.
Yeah, for sure. And don't forget, they're going to need pitching, starting pitching. Because with Wheeler, we don't know. There's a lot of uncertainty. Even if he does come back, and you don't know if he's going to be the same guy, it's not going to be until May at the earliest, if not later. So really, you're going off of, right now you have 5 starting pitchers under contract for next year. You got to assume that they're going to at least add one more. Andrew Painter could always be ready at some point, but I think you're going to probably look at adding one more starting pitcher at some point as well.
I think like a Nestor Cortez or somebody like that you're buying low on and just kind of hoping they bat, like that type of guy.
Breaking news. Dave Dombrowski will speak Thursday at 11 a.m.
Okay.
Thursday at 11 a.m. So there you
go. So, and we will speak probably Thursday at 2 p.m. or something like that with our reaction to that. But for now, we are going to log off, let this episode be what it is, and hopefully it won't be outdated in the next hour.
It won't be. It won't be. Hey, thanks to Wapner Newman for sponsoring this edition of the Phillies Stoplight. For Tim Kelly, I'm Anthony SanFilippo saying thanks for tuning in, and we will catch you Thursday after Dave Dombrowski's press conference.